This is super, super disturbing.
On Saturday, May 31st, 2014, a 12-year-old girl was stabbed.
Two 12-year-old girls charged with viciously attacking their friend.
I'm scared. I was told that if I just do something, my family would be in danger.
Dozens of disturbing drawings and numerous disfigured Barbie dolls.
Slenderman.
By its very act of defining reality and instituting meanings, the culture must seal itself off from what it cannot acknowledge as real or meaningful, and that we shall call the realm of horror. Modernity wants a place for everything and everything in its place. It is like putting borders or the thought that being could be somehow inaccessible. This totalizing reign of modernity is, of course, bound to fail.
Remember we tried to find Slenderman?
Trying to find who?
Slender.
Who's Slenderman?
An Ohio teen attacked her mother with a knife in the second stabbing linked to the fictional character Slenderman.
A tall, faceless, mysterious figure, a fictional character who lurks in the background, sometimes peering over the shoulders of children. The story of Slenderman changing, evolving all the time, with help from fans all over the world, adding to the story online, giving this fictional character new life every day. Anissa says she was surprised by Morgan's plan, but excited to prove that this fictional internet character actually existed, to prove the skeptics wrong.
It was my only friend for a long time, because
Why would you hurt your only friend?
it was necessary.
All proof, the defense team says, the girls truly believe Slenderman is real.
Quite suddenly, what once was an amusing if not unsettling internet meme became far more than that. If the narrative around the Slenderman character was convincing enough that little girls were convinced enough to stab their classmate 19 times in what can only be described as a proxy occult ritual, then Slenderman has moved beyond a cultural meme and into what can only be described as an nebulous cyber folk myth. The goal of this investigation is to evaluate the complicated nature of this phenomenon. To do so, the subject of monsters in general must be thoroughly understood, what function they play in society as a symbol of cultural anxiety, the role technology plays on 21st century discourse and narrative, and finally a careful analysis of Slenderman in particular as a rich textual entity that may provide insights on what makes him so alluring and so terrifying.
Police say the two attackers said they first encountered Slenderman on the website Creepypasta Wiki. They thought he was real, police say, and that if they didn't kill their classmate, then Slenderman would hurt them or their families.
It's the fictional character that originated as an internet meme created by Something Awful forum users Eric Knudsen in 2009. It's depicted as resembling a thin, unnaturally tall man with a blank and usually featureless face wearing a black suit. Stories of the Slenderman commonly feature him stalking, abducting, or traumatizing people, particularly children.
Slenderman is a fictional internet monster, a ghoul who lurks in chat rooms and some of the internet's darkest corners. He's faceless, often portrayed in a dark suit with octopus-like tentacles. Slenderman is believed to haunt children and those who look to expose him.
You have said that Slenderman is the boogeyman of this digital generation.
He is the thing that we fear that we don't actually encounter, right? So we check under our beds for the Slenderman, but he's, not actually there.
Could a fictional character really convince two 12-year-olds to kill?
A spokeswoman for the Slenderman creator, Eric Knudsen, and an administrator for creepypasta.wikia.com, where the meme was published, have apologized since the first attack and said Slenderman doesn't teach children to be violent. They said, "I am deeply saddened by the tragedy in Wisconsin, and my heart goes out to the families of those affected by this terrible act."
In a time period rife with anxiety regarding wars abroad, national security, environmental crises, privacy security, and technological and moral ambiguity, it is quite understandable that the 21st century would engender a new archetypal monster to verbalize those feelings. Indeed, horror films tend to dramatically increase in popularity during times of war, including World War II, Vietnam, and most recently, following the September 11th attacks on the Pentagon and World Trade Center. Part of what gives horror its appeal is its ability to transcend the limitations of language through careful symbolic representation. It is easier to discuss the monstrosity that represents something awful than to discuss the awfulness itself.
What the Slenderman's doing is it's taking together this sort of horror pastiche of things that people find scary, that they're using that to express reservations and anxiety about things like mental illness, about surveillance, about always kind of being followed and not knowing why. And I don't think that people are knowingly doing this, but they're definitely interacting in a way that they find scary. And the things that they find scary or anxiety-inducing are inevitably tied to the time period that they're talking in. And what legends do is they exist in the modern sort of known world. In this way, they're unlike a myth, which takes place a long time ago in a place that's far, far away. But a legend takes place in the modern, lived world, but at the same time also kind of stretches or tweaks the boundaries of that world. It stretches what we know to be true, and the reason that happens, most folklorists would agree, is because it expresses certain cultural anxieties of the time.
If you break it down at the very kind of basic level, no face, I think that's a really important aspect to it. The anonymity that Slenderman has and the ever-presence of it there is an anxiety of not just the internet and technology, but like aspects of surveillance. Somebody's always watching us.
One thing that I feel strongly that it sort of represents this anxiety of millennials, right? Of like the fact that he's sort of this old-fashioned suited white male who, which we see no shortage of fear of white men in this in our culture.
It's always at the periphery. You never actually have a clear view of it, and hence it seems to be playing on our perhaps frustration and fear of ambiguity. It's always on a liminal aspect. It's right on the edge of what we know to be true and real, and perhaps what's outside of our sight.
So he's a lurker, right? He doesn't actually attack people directly. He's a lurker, and that's the scariest thing you can have on the internet, right? Is somebody who's watching but never speaks. And I think that he's an anxiety of the internet, but also he came into existence almost entirely at the same time that Anonymous began to sort of formalize itself.
Who's watching? That there is somebody bigger, scarier, and I liked at one point I was reading about, like, you know, sometimes it just had Slenderman scenes just having tentacles, not even arms. The tentacles of a surveilled society and a surveillance society in which the state could grab you at any point, or whatever power institution could grab you at any point. That's what the Slenderman is: the anonymity, the surveillance, and, you know, the unknowability of, you know, what can happen to you if you step out of line.
This particular class of monster is terrifying because it simply exists for the sake of existing, not for any higher or intellectually conceivable purpose. This existence, being for itself, is ghostly. It haunts or possesses, but never is, and this quality itself can only be grasped in glimpses, out of the corner of an anxious eye.
And it reminds me in terms of the idea of looking at something and drive you crazy. And this, of course, is similar in Greek mythology to the Gorgon face, right? The notion of if you look in the face of Medusa, you will be destroyed, you'll be turned into stone.
The looking at and having judgment be made. We both fear and desire it simultaneously. You want to look at the thing that you're not supposed to look at, the thing that you know will do you harm. I don't want to know about Slenderman, yet I do want to know. I have to look at Gorgon because I'm not supposed to. I know I'll die. There's always the fear of somebody watching that you can't see, but yet the desire to see it.
Creatures which hang around borders and disrespect their integrity are traditionally described as monsters. They comprise a species of sinister miscreants exiled from the normative categories of the established system, and species of non-species, as it were. Alien monsters represent the unthought of any given point of knowledge and representation, the unfamiliar spectre which returns to haunt the secure citadel of consciousness.
It's sort of related to, if you're familiar with, I think it's a Buddhist concept called a Tulpa, that if you say something or believe in something enough, it becomes real.
It's that same idea of a word being repeated over and over and over again. The tale of the narrative is told over and over and over again. Even if it's the same context, it's still undergoing this morphology that allows it to become more personal. The power that Slenderman has is contingent upon his ability to then psychologically, in the minds of people, exist in the real world.
As we take you back inside a case that horrified parents across this country.
The stabbing is interesting. The desire for the erasure of identity seems to be really powerful there. That the social pressures, not just of young women, but of young people in general, could be such that I'd rather work for something, commit an act for this figure, and have my identity be utterly erased and become Slenderman at that point, is what she seems to almost be kind of enacting. These two 12-year-olds hear this story that could have been a derivative of a derivative of a derivative, and yet it's real as anything else.
I think everybody falls for it to some degree. I think it's the degree to which you fall for it. People think CNN is real. People think Fox News is real. And people think Slenderman may or may not have some kind of power, right? So I think it's all just a degree of how literate we are.
You just have to Google crazy things and you'll find some group that finds identity and community in a shared belief.
The original story spoke to enough people that they were like, oh, this is fascinating, I can add to this story. I can relate to it in this way. And so it becomes personal.
When I see art that's troubling, that works, because it is troubling, right? So it's done something.
And the helplessness that people feel in the face of Slenderman is, it's the same reason superheroes were created. That in a time of economic depression, in an age group that feels like they have no power, whatever it might be, this is the threat. And there's nobody to fight it. It's just there.
I think the other thing that is important about this type of creativity is that it's contemporary. It's happening right now. So even if it's Slenderman itself is not something that you're terribly interested in, hey, this is an opportunity to participate in the ongoing consensus and dialogue. I think we're just starting to scratch the surface of what's possible in real-time global interaction.
Memes themselves are already fascinating and cultural markers for what a society is thinking and what is dominating that society. And so this idea of the faceless man lurking behind people, there's a real cultural significance to that. The surveillance of the state, it's just there. How do you fight that? Well, you have Anonymous. What's Anonymous? Flip it around, and now you have Slenderman again, right? The fears and the anxieties of a generation, of a society, are manifested in things like Slenderman.
I don't see how to stop it. I don't see that it will be stopped. And maybe this is taking us into a different type of world than we're used to living in. And maybe it's not. Maybe Slenderman is not stoppable. There's that old famous first Apple advertisement in 1984. You've probably seen it, where the lady hammer thrower is able to break the screen, right? Maybe you can't break the screen. What are you going to do? Maybe you can't kill the devil. What are you going to do? It's very interesting.